The only current American outfit burst onto the grid in 2016 with optimism for not only the season but the future ahead. However, only 5 years later, they're now known for producing the worst cars on the grid and somehow changing identities despite being a Formula One team. So where did it all go wrong? And are we ever going to see them back at the front, or at least in the midfield, again? HAAS are the newest F1 team on the grid, entering the sport in 2016 with optimism of being one of the very best and to have a chance of fighting for wins with Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. It looked promising for the American outfit at the beginning. Having what was effectively a kit car meant that they could hit the ground running and become a force to be reckoned with. However, that's not really what happened. No surprise really, considering they were rookies. In fact, what actually happened was somewhat of a backwards evolution for a Formula One team. It's 2016, and HAAS have just announced their intentions to join the F1 grid for the upcoming season. To help them do so, they signed two drivers in Romain Grosjean, the Frenchman who is very fast on his day but is also very destructive with anything that has wheels, and Esteban Gutierrez who him. The season overall was very good for a brand new team with no experience. At Melbourne, Grosjean was on fine form, taking home P6 on their debut, but they did lose Esteban's car and P13 due to an horrific crash with the McLaren of Fernando Alonso. For the next few races, they continued to score good points, however, they'd then go on a very long pointless streak, going 8 races without scoring a single point. By the end of the season, they'd only managed to score in 5 of the 21 races that season. However, they'd still managed to score 29 points, all by Romain, and were able to claim P8 in the Constructors. However, the main issue was that pretty much all of the points, 75% to be exact, were scored within the first 5 races, and not much else coming on later in the season. Nonetheless though, it was a fine debut season for the American outfit who hoped to make bigger gains in the next season. For 2017, HAAS kept Romain at the team but decided to swap the disappointing Esteban out for the Swede that is Kevin Magnussen. Also new for 2017 was a change in regulations that created wider and longer cars that made them have increased levels of downforce. As you would expect, the only way was up for the team, as in from the 6th step to a flight of stairs to the 8th. Compared to the last season where they were strongest throughout only the first few races, they seem to have found their rhythm and instead scored consistent and good points throughout the entire season. The highest point being P6 for Grosjean in Austria, followed by a couple of P7 finishes in both Baku and Japan. However, despite the chance of scoring high points each race, they usually suffered from retirements quite often, from either mechanical failures to just straight up crashing out of the race, which Grosjean was already good at but seemed to be improving at race by race. By the end of the season, they were P8 in the Constructors' Championships, with 47 points, which was better than their first year, but not good when you think their car was amongst one of the best on the grid that had high potential to score good points each race. Nonetheless though, next year was once again filled with optimism, and this time for good reason. For 2018, another set of regulations entered the world of Formula One. These ones had banned both the use of shark fins on the rear of the car and had introduced the halo to the cockpit. The season started well for HAAS, qualifying P6 and P7 with Kevin and Romain respectively for the Australian Grand Prix, but then having both cars retire the following day due to tyres not being fitted properly during their pit stop. They would then score a handful of points until they reached round 9 in Austria, where they would have their best weekend in Formula One. On Saturday, Romain qualified P7 and Kevin went fast enough for P8. Not bad for their wish version of a Ferrari. However, on Sunday, they would one-up it, finishing P5 and P7, taking home 22 points for them. Up to this day, still their best weekend in Formula One. More strong and consistent points finishes would occur over the rest of the season from both drivers, and the team would end up finishing the championship in P5 with 93 points to their name, which, fun fact, is actually 46.5% of their total points scored in Formula One from 2016 until the present day. However, it was still quite a disappointing season. They could have easily got into the triple digits had their car finished more races. Just a few examples of where they lost heavy points was in Australia, where the pit stop screwed them, Baku, where Grosjean crashed under the safety car, Spain, where Grosjean spun into a Toro Rosso and a Renault, and then in Silverstone, where Grosjean tangled with Sainz. Are you getting the feeling that one of the drivers has found the barrier more than the other? For 2019, HAAS were looking to improve upon their 5th place from the year before. However, things didn't really start off well for them. In pre-season, they were the 5th fastest team on average, and at the season opener, they'd qualified P6 and P7, yet only have the one car finish the next day, and only in P6. For the next 8 races, they would only score a total of 8 points, and when they reached Silverstone, it was clear to see that they were slowly falling further back from the midfield. Their fastest time being set by Grosjean, only being fast enough for P4. Yet neither car would finish the race since they'd collide and would be both forced to retire from the event. This made Gunther Steiner pretty mad, especially when Kevin smashed his door. At the next event in Germany, they would get their best points finish of the year, with their cars being P7 and P8, taking home a total of 10 points. However, Silverstone had pretty much summed up the rest of their season. They would only score 2 more points in the remaining 10 races and would end their season in 9th place in the championship, ahead of only Williams, who scored a single point that season. A very disappointing response to what was the best of HAAS the year before. The main way of summing it up was Kevin's qualifying in Canada. Absolutely brilliant up until it decides it doesn't want to be and then runs itself off a cliff. But either way, surely it can't get any worse, right? Right? 2019 was easily one of the worst seasons for HAAS. However, their fans were in for a rude awakening. Despite the confirmation from Gunther Steiner that the development of the car would hopefully see them become part of the midfield again, that would have to wait. The worldwide pandemic caused the whole Formula 1 community to grind to a halt for months and would see very little work happen on development on all cars of the grid. HAAS, however, would see what can only be described as a shit show unveiled before their eyes once the season got underway. A double retirement in the season round didn't bode well for the team, and they would have to wait 2 more rounds until they scored their first point of the season. Just the one. A P10 finish at the Hungaroring for Kevin would bring in some confidence for the remainder of the season. However, this would be a false dawn. A run of 7 pointless finishes would see the team slowly move further away from all teams except William, who were yet to score a point. Then in Germany at the Eiffel Grand Prix, the team would claim their best finish in a race for that year. P9 for Grosjean would see the team rise to a staggering 3 points in the championship. They would finish the season on a disappointing run of 6 more pointless finishes for the American outfit. Both of their current drivers, Grosjean and Kevin, would be dropped for the upcoming season, hoping that 2021 would finally see a turnaround in their bad fortune. 2021 was supposed to see the introduction of a whole new set of regulations, one that would see the whole grid get thrown in at the very deep end, having to redevelop their cars from square one. However, the COVID-19 pandemic from the previous year had put a temporary halt on these rules being brought in, and so the teams were allowed to further develop their 2020 cars for the upcoming season. HAAS, however, decided against it, and for a good reason. To prepare for the next few years, they sold out to the Ukrainian company Uralkali, or Uralkali, I don't fucking care, which meant the owner's son, Nikita, would get one of the seats for 2021, to which the F1 community was so overly thrilled to hear. Yay! They then also signed up the reigning F2 champion of Mick Schumacher. Nice. The car, however, was anything but it. It was slow, heavy on the steering, and an absolute overall shitbox. Nikita was crowned Mazepin within 2 free practice sessions and had a race debut of an incredible 3 corners. Now that's some top class shit, my friend. Mick, meanwhile, would do some things. He drove some good races when Nikita didn't try and crash into him. Mick would also do the unthinkable, getting into Q2 twice. Like, how? Just how did he do it in that shitbox? However, nothing happened for the team. No points at all season. The closest they got was P12 in Hungary, but that was mainly because of Bottas going wee bowling, so a fluke to say the least. Yet the season was pretty much summed up by the amount of crashes each weekend, the fact they saw more blue flags than checkered flags, and the idea that they were so goddamn far off the back of the grid, it was unreal. They were pretty much an F2 car that managed to get onto the F1 grid. However, despite all this, looking ahead to the 2022 season, all teams are full of optimism, even if he names HAAS. The new car has already been shown to the public, the livery at least, and, well, is it any good? Nobody really knows. But I'm hoping for them to at least be in the midfield, but we'll have to see what the future brings. They could potentially be consistent point scorers, which I actually hope happens, or hell, they could even be podium or race winner contenders. I doubt it, but hey, like I said, nobody knows. But this is all a prediction. We won't actually know how good the car is until the lights go out in Bahrain for the season opener next month. And that pretty much sums up the up and down career of HAAS in Formula 1 so far. As usual, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps out the channel a lot and is also free. But either way, I'll see you in the next one.